Welcome to episode 237, An Unconventional Approach to Human Connection with Celinne Da Costa. Welcome to the Be That 1% podcast. I'm your host, James Silvis, mindset specialist and performance coach. And here on the show, I'm going to challenge you to think deeper, commit to greatness, and develop a stronger mindset. You'll hear stories from those who are living life on their terms, and you'll receive strategies that will help you level up. So the question is, are you ready to be your own 1%? Let's get started. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Be That 1% podcast. I have Celinne Da Costa in here. Hope I said that right. In the house today. I recently connected with her through a mutual friend, Brandon. Shout out to you. And when we connected about, I want to say 3 weeks, a month ago, we had a really awesome conversation, very deep about just life, what we've learned. We're both coaches and we're just vibing off of what we've been learning and what we've been sharing. And I was like, you know what? This would be a really cool podcast episode. Let's create that space and have you on. And so she said yes, and here she is. So let me tell you a little bit about who Celinne is. She's a coach and subconscious expert, which we're going to pull on. She helps her clients rewrite their story and reprogram their minds so that they live out their soul's highest expression and destiny. She's been featured in Forbes as being one of the top online business experts, and she has her own TED Talk, which is super cool. And I'm just excited to hear more of her story and the exciting things that she's up to. So Celinne, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for using my birth name pronounced the way it was originally intended.
Of course. I'm always a fan of using people's real names, and unless they tell me otherwise. So we're going to begin with some rapid fire questions, and then we'll jump into the meat of the episode here. So first and foremost, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Rome, Italy until the age of 10. And then I spent a year in Brazil and then 15 years in the United States, which is where the accent comes from.
Beautiful. What is a philosophy that you live by?
It's a quote by T.S. Eliot. In a minute, there's time for decisions and revisions, which a minute will reverse. And it speaks to just, we make decisions and sometimes we need to change them and it's okay. And I believe it just captures the just life in its nature. The paradox of life is captured inside of that quote. And so I really love it.
Beautiful. Love it. What is your definition of failure?
Not getting back up.
What does the world need more of right now?
At the risk of sounding cheesy, love and compassion for each other.
Yes. What is a game-changing book you have read recently or in the past?
Oh, recently is Transurfing Reality, but I've read many game-changing books. This one was most recent.
Okay. What is a solid piece of advice that you have received recently or in the past that has served you well?
I'm still learning this one. Be patient with yourself and believe in your lifelong potential instead of just looking at the short term.
Great. What did you have to give up or sacrifice? This is probably a heavy question. Or sacrifice in order to get to where you are today?
Time spent in presence and joy and pleasure, which is what I am now. My focus is on reversing that.
That's great. Cool. Thank you for that. So one of the things that you mentioned in our first conversation together was this idea that you were going to spend a whole year sleeping on strangers' couches. And I hope you do a better job of explaining it, but this is the gist that I got. You wanted to see how you can build connections with people that you don't know and foster, a cool experience. And I thought that was really fascinating because one of the things that I've done is a presence experiment who I was inspired by, an artist who I saw who would just sit in this museum and people would come in and make eye contact with her. And I'm drawing a blank on her name. I think it was Abramovich. She did this in somewhere in the UK, I think. And it inspired me to want to do that. So I kind of replicated it in my own way. And I would sit outside and just have a sign, say, I'm going to be present with you. And we wouldn't say anything. We would just lock eyes with each other. And I learned a lot from that. And I made a podcast episode about it. And so when you said what you did, that reminded me of like what I did, but like way more vast. And so I wanted to hear, one, why did you want to do that? And then two, what did you learn? And what do you still carry those wisdoms with you throughout today?
Okay. So why did I do it? I did the experiment originally because at the time, it literally felt like I would do this or my soul would die. It was dire. I was living in New York City and I had been working in corporate for a few years. And essentially, growing up in the US as an immigrant, I had a really strong conditioning, which was that you need to work very hard. You need to get into the top schools, you need to get into the top jobs, and you need to make a name out of yourself, and you need to earn enough money so that you can, carry on the name and make everybody proud. So there was a lot of, and I'm sure any immigrant that's listening to this can relate, there was just a lot of pressure as to who I needed to become to fit into the stereotypical model of the American dream. And long story made short, I spent over a decade really efforting to fit perfectly into this model. Star student, went to the top university in the US, started working for a top agency in New York City, because it has to be New York City, and working those 10 to 12 hour days and just being in the stereotypical rat race, like wake up, go to the gym, go work for 10, 12 hours, go get a drink with a friend. If, you schedule, get into their calendar 3 weeks in advance, if you're lucky, and go to sleep, do it all over again. And I hit a breaking point about 3 years in, but again, we're saying about 13 years into this wheel, where I had a really life-changing trip to Cambodia. It was a volunteer trip where I was volunteering in Phnom Penh, which is one of the poorest cities on the planet, and working with orphan children. And I've been exposed to poverty before, being half Brazilian and really having had the opportunity to, my parents always exposed me to, and I traveled a lot. But I just hit a point where it became very clear that the way that my life was going was just going to perpetually keep going for years and years and years without any end. And the way that it looked like is that I was miserable, I was overworked, my nervous system was just completely out of whack, full of trauma, just unhappy and unable to even enjoy anything that I created. And so I hit a point where I said, I have to change my life. I just have to. And I didn't know how. I had no idea. I just knew that I had to. And this was September of 2015, where I just looked myself in the mirror and I said, I cannot consciously live another day in fear. Just can't do it. And fast forward to 9 months, and I'm on a one-way ticket to go and do this trip around the world. So what happened? I tried to get a different job in the same city, different job in a different city, a different job in a different country, a different kind of industry in a different country, and nothing was clicking. And I remember I had this day where I said, what if I just said, screw all of this, like screw all of this, everything I've created, and I just start from scratch? And what if, when I start from scratch, I abide by 3 principles, and these 3 principles are guided by what I love the most in my life, which is travel, meeting people, and writing. What can I create? And it started this process, this creative process of realizing, well, what if I just travel the world? Yeah, but I don't want to just travel the world. I want to do something meaningful. What if I travel the world and I'm meeting people? Well, what's the best way to do that? What's the edge? And out came this idea of, what if I circumnavigate the globe? So it's a challenge. It has a beginning and an end. It's not like me going into the ether and just backpacking for the next 6 years of my life. It has a beginning and an end. And I challenged myself to couch surf without actually using the website, but actually like human connection, friends of friends, people I meet on the road, and actually just see if I take a leap into the world, curiously, if I take a leap into the world and I am centered into my principles, like I am every single day living out the life that I want, will people help? Will the universe help? Like, will I be supported in this if I just give it a try? And so off I went on a one-way ticket. And, what happened was that over the next year or so, I traveled to over 20 countries, and I ended up sleeping in the homes of over 100 people, the vast majority of which were strangers. And so as I went along, to answer your second question around what was my biggest insight, basically, I threw myself into the world and I said, hey guys, I'm doing this project. I want to make it around the world. And my dream is to design a life that I love and to live the life that I love. I have no freaking idea what I'm doing. I don't know. I need help. Will you help me? And all of the people that I said yes to, I interviewed. And this is how I grew my social media presence. It's how I was invited to become a writer for Forbes, which I was for about 5 years. It's how I was featured in a lot of media who picked up on my story, but I essentially just started to talk to people all over the world and interview them and tell their story on the internet. And there's a few things that popped out of that. Number one is my biggest insight of all, which informs my work to this day. It literally is the insight that gave birth to my career, which is that every single person on the planet has a story to tell, and how you choose to tell that story shaped your reality. And that was the biggest takeaway, because I met with people in the villages of Myanmar who had nothing to their name. And all they could share is about how beautiful their life was, how grateful they were for their life, how amazing, like telling me stories about who they were and how they grew up. And then you'd find, penthouses, people, biz executives in a penthouse in Malaysia who just is complaining about their bills, which, by the way, is universal. Everybody complains about their bills. It's like incredible. It doesn't matter how much you make. It's like this, just a complete string across 100 plus people. But and so with that insight, that is how I realized, oh my God, the stories that we tell ourselves are completely shaping the realities that we have. And as a result of the stories that we tell ourselves, we then create our surroundings. And not only our surroundings, but how we feel about those surroundings. And I saw this over and over and over again and realized there's something here. And that's where my work around helping people rewrite their story, both internal and then in their brand and in their personal brand, came out, because it's really around, let's match the life that you love, that you desire, that's on the outside, with the narrative that you're telling yourself on the inside. Let's match that. Let's sync that, so that they're both in harmony and actually like in alignment to what you're here on this planet to do and create. So
Yeah.
I forgot your question, but those are the two.
That's so good. I have so many other questions now. So going to all these countries, and did you have any language barriers, or did you go to places that you knew you could speak the language, or at least learn enough to be able to communicate?
So that's a really good question. And actually, this is a question that's near and dear to my heart. The first part of it is that I speak English, Portuguese, Spanish, and Italian. So that actually cleared, I had a little bit of
It's true.
Like I had a little bit of like choices when I couldn't communicate with people. But something that's really cool that, I've learned, and I'm sure you're familiar with this as well, is that when we're talking about communication, language actually only makes up about 7% of communication.
Yes.
And then I forget the exact specifics, but it's around 90% is body language. And then there's expressions. I personally believe this, I don't know if this is in the research papers, but energy as well is a really important way for us to communicate. And so there's so much communication that happens with a smile. There's so much, and me being Italian, I have a competitive advantage because I'm just like articulating everything. But I don't find, if I were to say like, what were my top difficulties from that trip around the world? I would say language barrier is not even it wouldn't even have crossed my mind if I were to list it off to you. It was quite easy to communicate, either broken words, broken language, like this, hugs, like smile, like it's doable. And it actually opened, I'm Latina, so I'm always been expressive, but it really opened me up on another level, expression wise as well.
Yeah, because so the follow-up question of that is, what filtering process were you looking for with like, oh, these people, or this person seems like someone that I would love to tell their story, or at least, present this idea if I could sleep on your couch kind of thing. What was your thought process each time you approached? And did it get easier, and did it change over time?
So, my original thought process is, if they're crazy enough to say yes, it's probably the right person. So okay. I think that the nature of my ask was a huge filter in and of itself, because I can tell you that the vast majority of the people who took me in were like really open-minded and asked questions. Like, it was just absolutely a lovely experience. And, I know a question that a lot of people ask is, oh, wasn't it scary? Or did you have bad experiences? Over 100 people, I can name you like one bad experience that I had to get out of there, and then another one that was just sketchy, but it was okay. So that's still a 1% rate. So, the way that I framed it was that it was not really a frame, because yes, it was a frame and it was true, which is like, listen, I am about to leave my entire life behind as I know it. And it's scary. And I've come up with this social experiment where I want to challenge myself to circumnavigate the globe. And what I've given myself is this challenge to see if I can do it like through human connection. And you are one of those humans that, James referred me to, or he mentioned to speak to you, or if I just met them, it's like, I feel like this is vulnerable, but can I sleep in your home? Do you have a place, or do you know somebody who'll be willing to host me? Because I would love to pass by and for this many days. So give them parameters so it feels safe. I've been doing this for X months, or I've been doing this for, with 10 people already. And it would be about 3 to 4 days. And I'm very hassle-free. And my intention is to get to know you, and to get to know this place that I'm visiting. And I would get either a very like, yes, or I would get like, yeah, I'm going to like connect you to somebody else. But it went really well. I got more bold as it got along.
Yeah, I bet.
I think I mentioned to you, I just completed my book around this journey. It's actually in the hands of an agent right now. But there's a chapter in which I literally talk about, this was about halfway through my trip, and I'm in Greece, and somebody's told me, you need to go to this remote island in Greece. And I'm like, how am I going to find someone in this island? There's like 300 people that live here. Like, how am I going to do this? And I kept looking, because I usually liked to find people ahead of time, so I wouldn't just show up somewhere and just panic. I like to line it up. But I was looking and looking and looking up until the night before. And I was in Santorini at this point. And I mentioned to my Greek host, I was like, I don't know what to do, because I can't find somebody on this island. And he says, I've been there once, and there's this cafe. And he writes me this cafe. So I just take a ferry to the island. And I just walk to this cafe. It's hot and sweaty. I'm like, with all my luggages, and it's just like, there's a lot of pebbles and cobblestone. And I just get into this cafe, and I'm like, can I please talk to this guy who was the owner that my friend the night before told me, like, all I have is the name of this cafe and the name of the owner. And so they're like, sorry, he's not here. And I'm like, oh my God. He's like, but his business partner is. And I said, okay, can I talk to his business partner? And business partner comes in, and I'm like, listen, I need a place to stay. But the rule is that it can't be an Airbnb. Like, it needs to be someone offering me their home. And this guy's just like, okay. And then he speaks like a little bit of English, and he's just so startled. And he literally takes out his phone book, like physical phone book, and starts phoning through like every single person on that. Oh my God. And just guest houses, like, no, we're not going to let her in for free. Or like, and just people are like, what is going on with this lady? And then he closes the book, and he's like, okay, you can stay in my house one night. Okay. And then and then we really need to find you a solution. And he was just like very resigned. And so I stay at his place, and, you know, he's like this fatherly, big bear, like Greek fatherly figure. And we just hit it off, and he takes me out to dinner with his friends. And then the next morning he's like, okay, you can stay. And then, so I stayed with him for 5 days. And it was so magical. And we just bonded so much. And 1 year later, I went to visit him, and I knocked on his door 1 year later, and he just like burst into tears. This time I had a place. 1 year later, I had my own place. But he's somebody who's like I'm going to be connected with for life. So that's just a small example of the very brazen ways that I've gone about doing it.
Damn, that's so cool. Do you have a favorite place that you visited that you learned a lot from, or that was memorable?
Well, one of those places ended up being my home, which is Bali, Indonesia. So I went there the first time, and I came back, and then I lived there. And I would say Myanmar was really special. This island in Greece, it's called Amorgos, also special. And I believe actually in Nepal, oh my God, how could I forget about Nepal? Nepal was extremely transformational for me. It's also, it takes up like a good chunk in my book as well. The places where I felt the deepest connection were the ones who were, the hearts were the purest, or like, I don't know how to say this well, but the people, the locals had this innocence and this pure, just welcoming nature about them. And that's where I gravitate towards. It's the homely, and that's what I was looking for. You know, I was looking to feel like I belonged and like I was welcome when in my internal world was in absolute turmoil, and I had no idea who I was. I was still remembering. And what I needed was that level of hospitality and welcoming and warmth on a heart level. So those are the places that really stayed with me. I can't tell you, it's like, oh, this place is really cool, this one has the best food. It's really, it was about which place gave me what I needed in that moment in my life.
Wow. Did you set yourself up financially for this, or was it like a stretch to pull off? Did your family know about it? Like, you know, what was the logistics of this? Or was it just like, you know what, I just got to go?
So I've always been quite psychic in nature, whereas like I see things coming before they're coming, and then I prepare for them even though I have no idea what's coming. So that's been a recurring theme in my life. When I decided that day that I looked into the mirror and said, I can't live like this anymore, and I will no longer live in fear consciously. And that day I started to put aside about 20% of my paycheck, which wasn't much at the time. But then I was putting aside 20%, and then that was compounded over from that until like the 9 months until I left. So I had a little bit of an egg that got built up. I took on extra consulting gigs. So while I was working full time, and I was like freelancing on the side. So I was able to bring in some more income. And then there's like the small things like cutting down on expenses and selling your furniture and all your nice things. And so I was able to put together $10,000. And here's what's going to blow your mind. In the year that I was traveling, I spent 8,500 of those.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy pants. So it was definitely like God's, I don't even know how I wouldn't know how to pull it off today, that's for sure. But it was just, it worked out. It all worked out, even in the pain, even in the struggle, even in the not knowing. I was so taken care of. And I think that's another big insight that I take from that journey that hasn't left me, is how taken care of we are when we have faith and when we believe in ourselves, and when we choose consciously. And this is, this lesson that is so deeply embedded in my bones is one that I'm now able to transfer over with my clients, because obviously we do a lot of heavy mindset work, subconscious reprogramming work. And sometimes it gets really challenging because you're literally looking to transform your life in different areas, and you don't know what to do, or we inevitably hit those challenges. But that like inner feeling and inner knowing of we are taken care of when we align to our soul's purpose and we act from that space is just so unshakable in me that I can hold it for myself and I can hold it for anyone else that is going to cross my path.
Was that, so now we're going to segue into like the subconscious and kind of like your mindset work that you do. Was that belief always there and it just got strengthened or reinforced as you went on your trip? Or was that not something that you had that you wanted and this trip really just catapulted it and now it's a for sure thing?
Mm-hmm. So before I went on this trip, a context is I was very unhappy. I had a lot of trauma that I didn't even, which I didn't realize was there, that I needed to work through. And it got uncovered even partially through this trip and in the years following. I had no belief in people. I didn't trust people. I was like, they're out to get me. They're out to screw me over. People are like, they don't have the best intentions at heart. So one of the reasons why this experiment was so strong for me is because I literally put like, not just my life on the line, but like my identity was on the line. And I knew, I didn't know, I knew, like, today I'm like, oh, that's limiting belief number one and limiting belief number two. And it's coming from this story. And here's the pattern. And here's like where it originated in my lifeline. I can track all of that today with the skill set that I have now. But back then I had none of that. And all I knew was that I somehow inherently knew that if I didn't change my environment, if I didn't change and prove myself wrong, I would always just live the rest of my life being right. But being right was not very conducive to my growth and to my well-being. And I wanted to be wrong. I needed to be wrong. And so when I went on this trip, I was not like a positive, like, oh, people are great. Like everybody's going to take care of me. It was something that was shown to me. Like, I mean, there's a reason why I wrote an entire book about this, James. Like it was miraculous. The things that happened to me, if I told you, you're like, that's not true. That's why it's going in the book, because it actually reads like a fiction story. And the ways that I would be in the middle of nowhere and then this one person would show up and support me, or the ways that, I went to Myanmar with $200 in my pocket. And I didn't know that in Myanmar, I couldn't access any of my bank accounts. There's like I didn't realize that I would have zero access. And I was there for 3 weeks. What are the odds that the only Burmese woman I've ever met in my life a year prior in New York City just happened to be in Myanmar that week that I was there for the first time in 3 years. And I just happened to see it on my Facebook feed. And she just happened to trust me enough to loan me $500 to get me through 3 weeks. What are the odds? And so there's all these, I mean, it's, oh my God, there's like hundreds of examples.
Yeah. What's so cool about that? And this is like, speaks to like the confidence research and the belief system research of like, when we say something about ourselves, we have these statements that we say, I'm a kind person. I can handle hard things. I trust that the world's going to take care of me. These statements, right? Most people don't take the time to double click on what's the evidence to support that. What you're referencing now, and I can feel it in your voice, and I could just feel it in your vibe right now, is there's zero doubt that you're taken care of energetically, spiritually, you name it, because you literally have like 100 references. So that unshakable belief guides you. I don't want to say effortlessly, but it's seamless in how you operate. And that's so beautiful. And I think that we all can do that, but a few things got to happen. One, you got to recognize what's the statement that, or belief that you're wanting to be true. In this case for you, you want to believe that people are kind and that you can connect with them. Then you take the leap. And through that, like, that's what becomes your evidence, right? And man, what a cool process. And it's inspiring to know where your mindset was before and where it is now and how fast that can change, but the commitment that it takes to go there, even in spite of the fear. I mean, the whole point was like to not live from fear, but I'm sure there was fear going in there that you were just like, I feel that, thank you, but I'm still doing it. Right.
Huge. And,
so cool.
one of the things that right now I'm I'm studying to actually be a Tantra practitioner in addition to NLP and hypnotherapy and breathwork. I really love the philosophy in Tantra. And one of the things I'm recently learning that's given so much context to what you're saying is that, can you be okay and present with the pain the way that you can be okay and present with the pleasure? Because we drive, towards pleasure and we go away from pain. But one of the keys of unlocking our highest potential is actually like that equanimity in pain. Now, I wish I could tell myself this to the 25-year-old self, because she definitely couldn't. Like, this is new me. But in that time, I learned so much from that past version of me. I continue, even when I was writing this book, I continue to learn so much. I was in so much pain. I was walking through the freaking fire of pain. And I know that happens to a lot of people when they want to create a really big and significant change in their life, like that huge transformation, is that there's a lot of pain involved, because you spent your entire life being a certain way or making certain decisions. And when you awaken and decide that you're going to choose a different path, there's some cleaning up to do. There's some, undoing, unlearning to do. Of course, it's going to take energy and it's going to require some momentum. And, I guess one of the things that the biggest thing when someone's like, oh, I want to make this change, is that we're like, oh no, it's too scary. Well, why is it scary? It's scary because you are already sensing the pain that you predict is coming in the future. What would happen if you can be okay with the pain that's coming in the future, and knowing that it doesn't like have a special meaning? It's not a different, pleasure is really nice and it's delicious and we love it. And pain is just another flavor of life. And when we can expand our capacity to hold pain in our body and actually not assign it a story, it's not about oh, it's because I'm not enough, or because look at all the ways that I don't belong, or I'm not this. If we remove the story and just actually can be present with that visceral experience that we have in our body, that sensation, which they teach in Vipassana as well, of pain, then it doesn't have power over you. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but it's inevitable that you're going to get through it, because everything in life is cyclical. Nothing lasts forever. And so you see, you're here, and the thing that you desire is here, which you associate as pleasure. And in between, sometimes there's a walk of pain. It's the walk over the coals. And you know what? It's okay. Learn to walk the coals. Because if you keep fearing the walk of the coals, what you'll keep doing is just not getting to where you want to be, because of the fear that you have of the pain that you're going to feel when you go and you walk the coals, which isn't even guaranteed, because it could be easy breezy. We don't know that. That's a maybe. You could, the thing could be actually super easy. You don't have to walk the coals. You might, but if you're afraid of walking the coals, then you're just not going to walk. Yeah. And what if you can be okay with it? What if you can really embrace that experience? Everything changes. And that's one of the things I've been integrating into my practice, and the things that I desire is can I be okay with holding and being present with the pain without assigning it a story or a meaning about who I am or what I'm not capable of doing,
Right. So true. And what you remind me of too is a lot of what that fear is that you're talking about stems from, FOPO, fear of people's opinions, and the stories that get associated to that, right? That's usually at the core of what is stopping well, what are my parents going to think? What if I do that and I fail, then I'm going to be seen as a failure. Then I'm going to look stupid, or then I'm going to suck at first. I don't want to do that. So let me just stay in my comfort zone and be good at what I'm at already. There's so much dialogue, right? And to your point, to be able to breathe into that and sit in there and just sit there, feel it. There's so much wisdom that comes from that. So I 100% agree with that. And then the second thing that you made me think of is the kind of neuroscience of emotion, and the how fast an emotion can pass through our system, right? And I was listening to a Mind Valley podcast. I forget the therapist and the doctor that was on there, but what she was saying is that you have an event, right? Something that happens to you in your life. Then you have a story, a meaning that you attach to it. Then based on that story, that meaning, then the biochemistry starts kicking in. That biochemistry elicits an emotion, and that emotion either drives you to action or not action, right? that whole cycle is 6 seconds long.
Yeah.
And so if that's true, and it is, then why do we feel certain emotions for weeks, months, years, decades? Because there's a thought loop. And that same thought loop, that same story, that same meaning is producing the emotional home that people are used to. And so when you understand the science and you learn how to sit with the pain, then you can start creating new paradigms, new beliefs, new stories, to your point, and start doing things like what you did that proved a new way of living that now you embody and love beyond whatever you thought was possible. Like, it's so cool.
Yeah, it's really, this is what you're talking about right now is my bread and butter. I live and breathe this stuff. And it's really interesting because one of the ways that I support my clients when I'm working with them in person is I'm also a breathwork practitioner. So of course I work with mindset and the subconscious, but as you know, the subconscious is not just your mind, it's also your body. You know, I work with the mental body, I work with the physical body, I work with the emotional body, and of course the spiritual energy body. And so when I'm facilitating clients, you're right that when we're looking at breath, for example, breath work, you get your conscious mind out of the way. So you're just basically dropping into the subconscious, and then someone is able to feel the feeling, the trauma that they're feeling. The longest, I didn't hear about the 6 seconds. What I learned in my training is that the longest emotion that takes for the body to process when the mind is out of the way is grief. And that takes around 3 minutes. And that's when the mind is out of the way. So even when I facilitate clients and they're going through, for example, processing grief or processing anger, there's a certain point where the quality of the breath literally changes. Like you can actually feel it in the energy field, where they will start, like if they're crying, there'll be a point where like they're crying and they're processing and the body's actually letting go. And you can literally feel the moment where the mind gets involved and starts to be like, oh, it's because I'm a failure. It's because it's this. And this is what I call a story loop. So then your mind starts to loop, and what you can literally feel in the body that this person has transitioned from feeling their emotion like completely expressed to getting the mind involved and then continuing to either cry or create suffering for themselves through the story that they're telling themselves. They'll notice themselves are crying. They're like, oh my God, what's this? What's going on? You know, I'm having this anger's coming out. And it's like, oh, it's because I'm a loser, because it's this. And then it starts to loop. And you can literally track it in the quality of the breath. It's incredible. And, you know, this is one of those moments is when I lean in, and part of my facilitation is like, it's safe to let the story go now, you know, and then you just see like when people take that in, you just see them like completely dropping the story and the emotion just clears. It's incredible. It's an incredible physical manifestation of the way that we are we have been conditioned by our society, especially Western society. As I don't find this, there's certain areas in the world where I don't actually see this as much, but that's a whole other story. But in the Western society specifically, we've been so conditioned to fear our emotion that we will spend so many years, months, being in a state of avoiding, like we create an entire life around us. We control our life to avoid feeling the emotion that we don't want to feel. And so we like create like a makeshift life for us to avoid that deeper emotion that doesn't want to come through, because we've been trained that it's too scary, when actually, and this is part of the work I do as well, like let's drop you into the emotion in a safe container, in a safe environment, and just feel the freaking feeling, feel the feelings. And then when you feel the feelings, it's like, boof, your body can relax. And it can file the memory that's attached to those emotions into the past instead of keep looping it into the present, which is what creates repeating undesirable situations, you know?
Yeah, I love that. I know exactly the moment. I know exactly the moment that you're talking about where the breathing changes and the posture shifts. There are a lot of athletes that I work with, and a lot of them will have, you know, let's just call it quote unquote mental blocks. And it's really just stories that they have in their mind, and it's like locked in their posture. And so I'll lead them through a few exercises, and in the midst of that, you can see when they think certain thoughts, their posture literally shrinks. It's like they get smaller, they take up less space, they dim themselves, like all this stuff, right? And as we begin working on it, asking questions, releasing, breathing, you begin to see like this subtle like drop of the shoulders and this sound of breath that's like it's a sigh. Sometimes it's louder, but it seems for me it's like more subtle. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
and it's like almost as if the story literally got ejected in that moment. And I'm like, what was that? And everyone knows what it is. Even the person that's going through it, they're like, wow, like I just felt that. And I'm like, yeah, I just saw that and felt that, and so it is a real thing. And when we create spaces like this through working with someone like you or anyone that one trusts and that is skilled enough to create such spaces and help you navigate this, like it doesn't have to take that long. It's a matter of being mindful, intentional, and open and surrendering to the process so that you gain the skill and the wisdom to be able to handle hard challenges or unforeseen things in the future, because they're coming. They will be there no matter what. So we might as well get used to having a skill that builds confidence so that you walk through life knowing that regardless of what happens to me, although I may not want it to happen, I'm capable of handling it. And that's an unshakable confidence that I hope more people experience. I hope everyone experiences that, but realistically, I don't think people are going to do the work, everyone. And so if you are listening to this podcast and you are resonating with this, like maybe this is a sign, an invitation for you to start doing this type of work. It's beautiful.
Really powerful. And, to speak, looping it back into the presence project that you were sharing and what you're saying now. And it's actually, I don't know if you had a chance to watch my TED Talk, but this is related, this is all connected. And I love this, so I'm going to highlight it. When you're saying it doesn't take that long, it's actually, when you ask, okay, but how can we make it shorter? Yes, it's a skill set. And it's having the right support if you need it. And it's also the level of presence through which you bring to the process. And, how that relates is my TED Talk is called An Unconventional Approach to Human Connection. And in the TED Talk, I actually talk about my trip, and I share the secret of how was I able to connect with all these people when all we had was a few days. And these people, a lot of them to this day, I'm in contact with. I mean, we had such a deep heart connection. And the idea that I shared is that connection is not measured in time. It's actually measured in presence. And so when we know somebody for 10, 20, whatever years, and we might still feel like we don't know them. But the actual, if we want to really quantum leap in that way, it's, can you spend 15 minutes of uninterrupted presence with the people that you love, and even a stranger every day? Because in 15 minutes of uninterrupted presence, you will get to know that person more than maybe some people that you've known for years. And
so
the same applies to this work. What you're sharing is that when we are, number one, dedicated, it's a commitment, it's a decision that we need to make, which is that I want to live my life in accordance to my soul's purpose. I want to have fulfillment and success and beauty. I want to live well. I want to feel well and see that manifested into my external reality. And when we make that decision, we learn the skills and we do the things and we get the coaches and all are really wonderful things. But what it comes down to is that life is actually like right here and right now. It's in this conversation. It's in when you shut down your computer and you walk down to the kitchen and you say hello to your wife and you are there with her as she speaks to you. It's in the way you pick up your children. It's in the way that you show up the next day and you have a conversation with your client and you're giving and dedicating your full presence, which allows you to have a deep connection, which allows you to be very well paid for what you do and allows you to continue to be in demand, because this is a quality that we are not cultivating as a society. And it's a quality that we must have for us to be here and enjoy our lives. Eckhart Tolle, like, yeah, the power now is like a little bit difficult to get through. I had to listen to it on 1.5 speed, which I don't think is the point, but it's the only way I could get through it. But the point, I know, right? Like, as I speak about presence, I was present for it in 1.5x. But it's that us being here now in that commitment creates that life. It shapes the decisions that we make. And when I work with people, my focus is, let's release the stories that keep you from being here now and that are creating a filter for you to see the beauty of now. And if you say today, and this is a mantra that I have myself, I teach it to my clients for their morning practice, I am committed to walking the path of my highest soul's destiny. What's my next step? That's it. What's my next step? What's my next step? What's my next step? 6 months from now, what happens? A year from now, what happens? 10 years from now, what's going to happen? You are walking the path and you're being in it and you're plugged into it now. And that to me is, I'm not perfect at it at all, but that to me is where what I aspire to embody and what I aspire to support others with in the best capacity that I know how. So that reminded me of, I don't know, it all looped together. It all connected.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you for saying that, because it reminds me of a quote by Abraham Hicks, who says, tomorrow never comes. Have you noticed? Because when it gets here, it's today. It's like we're always in this moment, always. And it sounds metaphysical, it sounds philosophical, and it is. And it's also true. Like, this is it, all it is right now. So it's always a powerful reminder to be, to think like that. For me, to validate what you're saying, when I'm present, I notice posture. I notice breathing. I notice tonality. I notice words. I notice, and there is no judgments. Well, minimal judgments, because I'm human, and that does come in, and I have to be mindful of that. But it's really, when I'm fully present, there's no me. I'm not there. It's the collaboration of what is there that I'm tapped into. And what that allows me to do is hear differently, see differently, be differently, all in an attempt to serve. And I think that's, for me, that's the key that allows me to be so present, is like, how can I help? Right. And then there's a surrendering of how that needs to look, how it needs to go. And I bring my toolkit. It's not like I'm just showing up without anything, but I'm also not tied to anything either, because all that might need to be there is just me to listen, and that's it. Or it might be for me to ask a question, and I won't know unless I'm fully present and there to flow with it. So I'm curious, like, how do you describe your presence when in relationships or in situations?
So what you're sharing with me is like one-on-one channeling, And so and this is intuition. And again, this is that neglected part of our education. I was like, the human manual, somebody ripped out these pages and it was for the advantage. That's a whole other rabbit hole we can go into another time. But someone's just like, I'm going to take out the whole right brain equation and let's just throw that one out. But what you're sharing is, and this is, my process and my experience, but it feels quite familiar with yours, which is that, and this is, every time right before I get on a client call, I make a prayer and I'm like, please, whatever comes through pretty in that moment. But the gist of it is, please, source universe, allow me to become the channel through which whatever will be most of service for this person can flow. And my work is to keep this clear. That's where my responsibility to myself as a coach, as a mentor, as a human being who's committed to my evolution is just let's keep this channel clear. And it's really about being present. It's just, okay, let me breathe. Let me regulate my body. Like, actually allow myself to be here now. My body is here. My emotional body is here. My mind is here in this moment. and let me put my focus on whatever is going on right now, whether it's another person, it's a friend, or it's a task that I'm working on that I really want to invite that presence into. And when your mind, your monkey mind, is focused on a point, and we'll call this a person for now. You're focusing your monkey mind on this person, and you can hold it there, which is why the practice of meditation is so powerful, because it literally trains us, just like the gym, when you're like, carrying a big box up all the stairs and you're moving and you're like, oh, thank God I do the squats at the gym. You know what I mean? It's like, it's because so you can carry stuff. That's why, or you can be strong. Or at least for me, I'm like, yes, I can carry my own luggage. That's why I work out. But that's the same with that mental fortitude is you can focus on a point and just stay. Okay. Now what happens is that you are opening up your field of consciousness to receive from the superconscious, from the quantum field. And so this person is coming in, and you're deeply listening, and you're deeply focused on what this person wants and needs, and what they're sharing, their body, their tonality, everything you've shared, because there's so many details in what they're not saying.
Yes.
And so you're focused on this point. And then what starts to happen is literally like what this person is saying starts to call in the information and the knowledge that is a match for that. Because this person is there. I'm thinking specifically coaching. They are there because they need support. Yeah. And they have declared through the financial exchange, or the exchange that they have given. They're like, I'm serious. I'm serious about the shift. Like, here's the exchange. Like, this is where my money is. I am going to make this shift. I'm here. I'm giving you time, giving you money. I'm here. And that fortitude, that like declaration, when we say this is what's going to happen, when we are coaching in integrity, we just become the container, the channel, and the mirror for this declaration to pass through us and pull up all the information, the knowledge, the codes that need to come through from the quantum field for this person to receive. We get to be that, and we get to hold that. And I'm speaking, of course, we're both coaches. So I'm specifically referring to coaching to give a tangible example, but it's the same thing in a partner, with your children. When you're in that state of hyperconsciousness, you're able to access knowledge and information that I know you've had this, and I've had it. Like, it's like, I didn't even know I knew that. Like, what just came out of my mouth?
Or like someone, someone's like,
what's going on?
Can you just repeat what you just said? I'm like, no. Nope,
this is what
I don't even know.
No, can't do it. Sorry. And this is it. This is us. This is service. This is us saying, you know what? My service is so, I'm so committed to my service that I am willing to keep this thing clean, which looks like, trauma work, inner child, doing our work to make sure that there's no filters and no interference with the message that's coming through.
Yeah.
And keep ourselves clear. And then expand our capacity emotionally, energetically, mentally, to be able to focus and stay present, and to be able to hold and receive the information that's coming in, because they're, without getting technical, it's like they're the light packets, they're like data packets that are coming through from the quantum field or the super conscious, coming through our consciousness, and then we need to like translate it, which in itself is a job. You know what I mean? For this person who has declared, I am changing my life, and here is me declaring it, and here's the evidence for it, and now they get to receive that. So for me, the art of coaching, but even it's just a way that we can practice this art of presence, which again doesn't necessarily have to go with coaching the job, but it's what I love about it. It's one of the ways that we get to like really embody and master this insane art of being presence, which requires a lot of reps, meditation, reps, emotional trauma work. Like it requires you to go to the gym emotionally, spiritually,
seriously,
and mentally, and also physically, I would say.
What's cool about this too is there's many different challenges within what we're describing. One is to do your own inner work, which is challenging to varying degrees. Then you have the actual focus muscle of being challenged. And then you have, in this coaching context, the challenge of helping someone through a problem that's very serious to them, that is not allowing them to be where they want to be or who they want to be, right? So there's like layers of challenges. And I think that those layers of challenges also help produce a state of flow, because you're somewhat leaping into the unknown. Like you're prepared to handle something that you've never encountered, if that even makes sense. It's like, well, how do you even do that? Because you have enough belief in your ability through the work that you've done to navigate unknowns. And a lot of times people are in unknowns, and it's through someone skilled at navigating that unknown through all the work that they've been doing and the flow and the presence that they're in, that they can grab from past experiences or from new experiences that are being birthed right there in that moment to bring the unknown into the known, so that there's a tactical path or a strategy that can be implemented, or something that can be released that can actually change the game for someone, for that conversation, for that interaction. And so I think the challenge piece for those of you who are listening that aren't coaches, like anything that is outside of your comfort zone is going to require a greater level of skill than you currently have. But it's only through going into that space that you actually get better. And so if you look at it from a way of, if I just keep challenging myself, that's actually good for my mental health. That's good for my emotional health. That's good for my humility. That's good for giving me an accurate reading of where I'm at, where I need to grow, and what needs to happen. And remove the story of I'm going to look X way, or it's going to be this hard, but instead focus on all the gifts that just lie in that space. I think people would be more willing to explore that. And through that exploration and curiosity, learn more about themselves, that give them even more validation on who they are, the value that they bring, so that they can be more present in interactions. Because what I see a lot of time is that the reason why people aren't present is because they're so concerned about what the other party is thinking about them, that they're so meta about what's actually happening. They're too far removed. And so the less removed you become through the more knowing of yourself, the less concerned you are with external things, because you got control of you. You're and to use your language, like you're self-regulated, right? And so I just felt called to say that, so that those listening can find their own way of finding that presence in their job, in their sport, in their craft, whatever it is, because it is possible and it is so worth it.
And can I add something to that point? There's one thing I would love to also throw in there, because everything you said, 100%, it's really important to develop that skill set. And that when you're going into the unknown, that skill set and that trust, and that is that masculine energy. And what I'd love to also add is another thing that to add is to strengthen your ability to surrender, which is that feminine energy coming in. Because when you're in the unknown, yes, you want to be prepared, and you want to like, I got my tools. I can do this. I can handle anything that comes my way into that space of the unknown. And there's this beautiful element of, and I know nothing. And I'm just going to like lean into this thing that I don't know. And I trust that I'm taking that surrender piece, which I find balances out. Like I have the skills, and also if I don't have to do anything. It's okay. Like it's going to be fine. Right. And so it's like we get to hold and be in both, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yes. The form and the formless. I love it.
Yin and
yang. All right. Right. Cool. So, is there anything else before we wind down that you feel would be really helpful to share, to mention, given what we've talked about so far and what the listener may be thinking about up to this point?
Yeah. So I know we've just gone through some really deep philosophical discussions, and we've likely opened up some rabbit holes in your mind. I'm sure you're like, whoa, what? Woo, woo. So I just want to start to, wrap it up. And one of the things that I want to share with whoever's listening is that it's simpler than it sounds, and then you might think. And that what it really comes down to is, listen, you can put down this podcast today, And if you just spend a few more minutes of your day being more present and using that presence to just be in the field of love with somebody, not necessarily a partner, but really just being with somebody and spending 15 minutes a day a day of presence, your entire life will transform. So as you are, it's fine. And who you are, it's perfect. And your journey, where you are in this point that you have found this podcast, it's exactly where you're meant to be. And also, there are several lanes that you can take depending on what it is that you want to create with your life. If there's something that's on your heart and you're like, this podcast has found you in a moment where you're like, there's this thing I really want to do. I really want to up level in this way in my career. I really want to call in a relationship that I desire. I really want to meet these, weight loss or well-being goals. And there's something you're really desiring in your heart. Just know that you are here now and you're on the path. So you're fine. And if you would like to get to where you want to be, just know that it's about just learning the skill set and understanding what it is that you can do. It's a skill set, as James was explaining, like just knowing how to do the thing. Like, for example, if you want to grow to the next level of your business, it looks like, okay, what is the skill set that you need to learn in order for you to get from level A to level B? Like, what's the skill set? What's missing? And really looking at that. But also that element of trusting yourself and knowing that when you are taking the step into something that's unknown, everything that you desire is on the other side of your comfort zone. And it's inevitable that you are going to take a step into that uncomfy zone and be like, oh, this is scary. This is unsteady. I don't know what I'm doing. And just ask yourself, like, can I trust myself to navigate this unknown and to get the resources or to ask the people that I need for me to go this? Can I trust myself? Can I choose to have faith that there's a bigger force at play that is bigger than me and anyone else who can help me, and that I am taken care of? And can I make a choice, a decision, let it sit in my heart and not waver from it, no matter what happens, no matter what obstacle, no matter what fire I need to walk over? Am I willing to choose to stay, to take a step after step after step, and to hold the pain, knowing and trusting in my heart in complete faith that I get to have the desire, and I ironically can bring it in right now if I want to. It's not over there. It's actually right here, right now. So that's a little meta, but hopefully, bringing all the pieces together, it's where you are is perfect. And if you would like to create another reality, it's absolutely doable. It's just going to ask you to step into the fear and expand your capacity to hold it in trust and faith and surrender.
Love that. Thank you, Celinne, so much for sharing your insights, your courage, your impact. I love what you're doing, and I can't wait to watch all the other things unfold as your book comes out. Definitely let me know, and I'll share it out too. But yeah, I'm very grateful. I'm glad we got to connect here, and thank you for being you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Where's the best place for everyone to connect with you?
Yeah. So I made it very, very easy to find me. Number one is you can go, if you'd like to learn more about what I do, how to work with me, and also get on my mailing list where I have some pretty awesome emails, if I say so myself. So I hope you can come in and come read them. So it is CelineDacosta.com, CelineDacosta.com. I say that because my mom got creative, 2 N's, 1 L. And so that's the main hub is my website. And if you'd like to connect with me personally, I spend a lot of my time on Instagram. So I am at Celinne Da Costa on Instagram. Come and say hello. Let me know what you thought about this podcast episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And on all the other mediums, the Twitter, wow, I'm dating myself. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm Celinne Da Costa on all of them. So you can easily find me through my name spelled the way that it is. It makes it very easy.
All right. We'll tag that in the show notes to make it easier for everybody. But yeah, thank you guys for showing up, for listening. Definitely apply what aligned with you today. And until next time, we'll see you on the next episode. Much love.